Hello. You know, I think one of the ways we get hung up, I want to talk about emotions here. I think one of the major ways we get hung up isn't so much the emotions themselves. Now, stay with me here. Our emotional problems, to a large extent, are not related to the emotions themselves. I suggest that the problem we often have with our emotions is based in our mind, our ego. We have built a narrative, a monologue, a habit, a ritual, a preference mentally that sculpts our relationship with our emotions. Our emotions are really, they're very impersonal. If I touch a hot stove with my finger, the blister isn't personal. It's just a mechanism. It's a function of how the human body interacts with its environment. And emotions are very similar to that. The emotions we get, the emotions we feel, are a reflection of how we're interacting with our environment. I think it's a really curious thing that we can go decades in our life and never really come to terms with our emotional stigmas, our emotional habits. We're not really taught very well about our emotions. And I'd probably put it somewhere in middle school, right before puberty, that we would teach public classes in schools about the nature of emotions and our relationship to the impersonal nature of emotions. Emotional events shouldn't last very long. They're just messengers. Our emotions are just messengers. They're giving us feedback about how congruent or incongruent our expectations of reality is. That's kind of a simple analogy, but if you spend some time with it, I think you can get some real traction out of it. Hi, I'm Les Jensen. I'm the founder of New Human Living. My spiritual awakening was the cosmic 2x4, cracked me upside the head, and it was totally based in emotions. I had a significant, massive, really, mental and my ego had a very pronounced stigma with the emotion of anger, to the point that I never really allowed myself to feel anger for decades. I had a mental stigma with the impersonal emotion of anger. And it was cleaning my clock. I tell you what, my ego was scared to death of anger, and yet I was not conscious. I was not aware of this stigma. And it was strong arming my life into a smaller and smaller perspective. My relationships were more and more dysfunctional. It was very challenging to show up every day and go through my life. For really decades, I wouldn't allow myself to feel the emotion of anger at all. And I want to be very clear, this was subconscious. I was not aware of this behavior. Every time I had an emotional event related towards anger that came up, I would lose my personal power. I would push that anger into my subconscious. I would push that into my subconscious, and it charged itself up. And then the cosmic 2x4 cracked me open about 25 years ago. So when you think of yourself as an emotional being, an emotional persona, don't leave the mental component out of your emotional intelligence, your emotional skill set, your ability to master your emotions. Life is such a wonderful thing when you can show up for it. You know, if you commute every day, you can pull up a radio episode. We have hundreds of fantastic interviews online for free. You can dial up an interview and listen to it while you commute to work. Why not grow yourself? Why not take the time to better understand who you are, how this human genome works? These are exciting times. Many of us have gone through a lot of emotional upheaval. 2020 for a lot of people was very, very challenging emotionally, and it doesn't have to be that way. Now, today, my emotions are my best friend. They're my feedback mechanism. They're telling me quite clearly, moment to moment, if I'm congruent with myself, if my expectation of, quote, reality, unquote, is realistic. Take the time to learn about emotions. I've got a wonderful audio clip at newhumanliving.com, a solid hour of diving into the depths, a very deep dive into the look of the mechanics of emotions in our human experience. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate it. Until next time, thanks for listening.